The ACC football media polls are out, and NC State is slated to finish exactly where they did last year.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Monday sponsor is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, as always, apply. Happy Monday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. The calendar has now flipped to August. There is college football this month. Opening night, game one kickoff for NC State is merely just over 3 weeks away. We are chomping at the bit to get this thing going. To be honest with you, I don't even need the rest of August. Just give me football season. To hell with the rest of it. I'm ready to get this thing going. Kenton, at the end of last week, the ACC media did release their preseason poll, and NC State was picked to finish 10th in the conference, which ironically is exactly where they finished last year. Your thoughts?
I think it's kind of funny. I'm not going to lie. The ACC media said, you can change all the faces you want around that program. You're still who you are. I think that's pretty funny. I'm sorry. I think it's objectively hilarious. Do I think that the Wolfpack have the potential to exceed this ranking? Absolutely. But I also believe that the Wolfpack have the potential to fall behind this ranking as well. So I look at this and I say to myself, I mean, hey, it's preseason. We're getting to that time of the year where the preseason selections for all ACC and for where teams will finish, they came out right before best shape of your life season, because everybody's in the best shape of their lives right now. Everybody's faster than they've ever been, stronger than they've ever been, which technically is accurate for college football. The pros, that's a different story, but we're not going to get into that. But yeah, everybody's at their peak physically. And so that's pretty much going to be the story out of the first week of camp, maybe a few exciting freshmen. So, I mean, I'm not too surprised that this is big news, NC State being predicted to finish exactly where we were last year, because while I do think that the offense takes a step forward, many are expecting the defense to take a step back.
Also not surprising to me either, and it kind of connects to some of the conversations we've been having over the course of the last couple weeks, in that this is a good spot for NC State to be under the radar. Nobody believes in you. Nobody's really talking about you much outside of the occasional reporter that thinks CJ Bailey is, undervalued and underrated, which he is. But for NC State to be out of the limelight, especially after how last year really fell apart, this is what we've always known to be beneficial for Dave Dorn teams. And again, the law of the wolf will be put to the test for feels like the umpteenth time. When the expectations are low or non-existent, that is typically when NC State experiences the most success. Will it happen again in 2025? Well, we've talked about some of the offensive pieces that might line up in that favor. You're looking at a year two of CJ Bailey, a season now second-year running back in Hollywood Smothers. Your wide receiving core is virtually 98% back with the absence of Casey Concepcion, and I guess Jakari Collins as well, so like 84% back, whatever. The math's not right on that. But I say all that to say, not surprised that they're not getting looked at. I mean, Kenton, if I remember correctly, I think you ranked them 7th in the conference. I think I put them 8th, or maybe it was 9th, right there, virtually the same spot. But I have them finishing maybe a game or two above where they finished last year. Maybe that's a spoiler alert for our schedule predictions, which we'll do in the coming weeks. But not at all surprised. I think it's a great spot to be under the radar.
I mean, Grayson, if we're being quite honest here, the highest up team that was a 6 or 7 win team last year was Georgia Tech, right? And so if you look at Georgia Tech before their bowl game, they were 6-6. And they finished, I believe it was 6th in the conference. So the difference between 6th and 10th is like, there's not this massive gap to where you're like, oh, the 6th ranked team finishes with this ranking and the 10th finishes with this. Although there is the outlier of Duke being in there at 9-4, everybody else in that range, you're looking at Pitt 7-6, NC State 6-7, BC 7-6, Virginia Tech, 6-7. Again, you got Duke as the outlier, 9-4. But then Georgia Tech is the highest rated of those teams at 7-6. So you've got a massive backlog of teams. And really, the rabbit hole goes deeper than that if you go all the way down to Cal at 2-6, or at 6-7 rather, as one of the lower ranked teams in the conference because of their conference record as opposed to their out of conference record. So you're looking at a situation where that 6-7 wins, even if you do get over 6 and you get to 7, it doesn't really, even if it's a conference win, it's generally not going to elevate you that high, and losing that one conference game ain't going to knock you down that low.
And I think it's crazy in that same note. Think about how many games finished like one play could have flipped the outcome. I mean, you're talking Wake Forest last year, arguably Syracuse last year, Georgia Tech last year. That's just 3 games. I mean, if you want to count the bowl game against ECU as well, even though that wouldn't have been the overall regular season record, that's 3 games you could have easily flipped, and we could be talking about a 9-3 season for NC State. Think about how drastically different the conversation would be around the program if just 3 or 4 plays went differently in the opposite direction. It's wild how small that, I guess, margin for error is, if you want to call it that, was for the Wolfpack last year. And so furthering Kenton's point here, the difference between, per se, the 7th team in the ACC or the 11th or 12th team in the ACC, it's really small. It's virtually 1 victory, or if you have the same record, it comes down to tiebreakers. So again, not exactly surprised to see NC State at 10, but you see some of these other teams, like maybe the Dirty Foot Club at 8. Do we feel we're head and shoulders above NC State? I certainly don't. And I don't think that's a biased take to say that either. Or like Pittsburgh. You see Pittsburgh there at 9. I'll just go ahead and pose the question here, Kenton. What are some of the teams on this preseason poll that really surprised you the most?
Florida State has 4 first-place votes. Who did that?
Who? Show your hands.
Show your hands. Show yourself, you fiend. I'm more okay with Virginia Tech getting the first-place vote than Florida State for some very obvious reasons. But, other than that, I think that everything here is pretty above board. I think all the rest is fairly, in line with what I would expect. I don't really look at anybody here and say, hey, they got undeserving votes or they're a place that they shouldn't be. Obviously the Dirty Foot Club at 8 is a little bit hilarious to me because what are we doing there? I don't really get that one. But other than that, I think that everybody is pretty much ranked where they ought to be. Like, I can justify each and every one of these. I can look at these and I can say there's a world where they finished there. And even for the Dirty Foot Club, I'll give them that. There's a world where they finish 8th. I just don't see it happening.
I think the biggest surprise for me might be Syracuse as low as 12. And certainly they lost a lot of production. You lose Kyle McCord. You lose some of your top pass catchers from last year. But Fran Brown just strikes me as a guy that, regardless of who he's got, he's going to get it right, or relatively right. I don't think Syracuse is going to win 10 games again this year, but I don't think they'll be 12th in the conference either. Like, 12th in the conference, to me, you're looking at like a 5-7, maybe a 6-6 year. That would actually shock me if Fran Brown comes through the finish line that low on the totem pole. So it kind of feels like the usual suspect, to be honest. I do agree with Kenton's sentiments on Florida State. That seems like a lot of trust for what was one of the worst teams in the conference last year. Just kind of feels like we're blindly expecting them to flip it around. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I'm going to have to see some things proven on the football field before I buy any stock down there in Tallahassee. I want to actually take this opportunity now to flip to another preseason poll. This one was only assembled by the ACC hosts on the Locked On Podcast Network. Take a look at this. Clemson 1, Miami 2, Louisville 3, Georgia Tech 4, SMU 5, Duke 6, Syracuse 7. See, that's kind of what I'm basing my Syracuse take off. 7 for the Locked On hosts, but 12 in the overall ACC media. That's a big gap. You see Pitt at 8, Virginia Tech at 9. I mean, is this Isaac Shades doing? Did he put us at 17 to weigh us down that far? What is Cal doing ahead of NC State? I don't know. Boston College at 12, Virginia at 13, Florida State at 14. I think I know who's responsible for that one. The Dirty Foot Club at 15. Okay, hand up. That might be me. Wake Forest at 16 and Stanford at 17. Kenton, what are your thoughts on the Locked On Only poll?
I think that this one is pretty interesting because I can understand the rationale of having Syracuse at 12. while I do think that the world of Fran Brown, and while I do think he's doing an excellent job on the recruiting trail and all that, you lose your top quarterback or your top passer, your top rusher, your top receivers. Not just one. I believe all three of their top receivers are now gone. You lose multiple pieces on defense. And on top of all of this, there was a 12-team playoff last year. Now, Grayson, what percentage of the 12-team playoff do you believe is on their schedule this year? 4 teams that were in last year's playoff on their schedule. Tennessee, Clemson, SMU, and Notre Dame, all on their schedule.
Wow.
All on their schedule. I get why, even though I believe if this was conference rankings as far as which coaches I like the most or which coaches I think can maximize their talent the most, I could see having Syracuse that high. But of those 4 games, Grayson, if I told you those 4 games, Tennessee, SMU, Notre Dame, and Clemson, how many of those do you think they win? What do you think their record is out of those 4?
I see your point. Maybe one, to be honest, maybe one.
So if you get one of those games, right, even if we give you UConn, Colgate, now you got to beat Duke, Pitt, Georgia Tech, UNC, Miami, BC. You have to get multiple wins off of those teams. And by multiple, I mean like 5 or 6 wins off those teams to get to a bowl game. You said that you could see them winning 1. So now we'll give you UConn and Colgate as 2 free spaces. Okay, great. Now you need at least 3 more just to get to a bowl game out of Duke, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Dirty Foot Club, Miami, and Boston College. That's just to get to a bowl game. We're not even talking about, being 7th best in the conference.
And that, folks, is why you should look at the schedule before you criticize being 12th in the preseason poll. Yeah, no, that's a hard schedule for Syracuse, especially losing as much production as they did. They might be pretty much dead on for like a 5-7, 6-6 type year. But yep, that's it for the ACC preseason poll. And now it's up to the Wolfpack. The bulletin board material is now out there. They know what people think about them. It's time to get to work. Coming up next, we're talking a bit more about Justin Joly, who was the selection for first team All-ACC in the preseason. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Monday sponsor is 5-Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and then turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off the course, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Has anyone in your golf group ever tried to pull off a ridiculous bet, like maybe a wager on a hole or a shot? Or maybe you're like Dave Dorn and you just sink it in one go, a hole-in-one dating back to last weekend. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you all the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you head on over to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5 and then hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off of your order. This offer is only valid from now until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, so whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36 holes, get the energizing boost that you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Middle portion of our Monday show, zooming in a little bit further on the preseason All-ACC voting. The All-ACC first-teamers, we had a Wolfpacker in the mix, so go ahead and pull up the list now. First thing you'll probably notice, that's a whole lot of paw prints on that list. Not exactly a surprise, and in large part, that is why Clemson is the heavy favorite to win the ACC this year. Doesn't shock you at all here. But you also see Justin Joly, our Justin Joly, the first team tight end selection. Kenton, this is exactly where both of us voted him. It obviously where the majority of the media voted him as well, rightfully so, because we do feel like we have not only the best tight end in the conference, we have one of the best tight ends in the country.
Oh, absolutely. Mackey Award watch list for a reason. Do you know what his nickname was in high school, Grayson?
No, I don't. What is it?
The Boogeyman. The boogeyman. You know, they was looking in the mirror trying not to say his name 3 times, or else you just might get mossed in your sleep. But this young man, he absolutely terrifies defenses. He is nightmare fuel for defensive coordinators, and he is a true baller in every sense of the sort in terms of what you want from a modern tight end. He can get it done in terms of his route running, in terms of his ability to catch the ball away from his body and in tight spaces. And the run after the catch is probably his best aspect. I'd say that's the thing in his game that I like the most. So, you know, Justin Joly being a first-team All-ACC guy and being the only first-team All-ACC Wolfpack guy, I mean, that's a hell of a representative if I had to choose one.
So let me get this straight. We have the guy that was perceived to be our best player in college football 26. He's also the All-ACC first-teamer for tight end. Multiple factions listed him as a top 5 tight end in the country. He's going to be on the Mackey Award watch list. If he wins it, he will be the top tight end in the country. And his nickname in high school was the Boogeyman. Kurt Roper, if you're listening to this, use this man like his nickname is the Boogeyman. Justin Joly, in my opinion, is probably the best overall player we have on this team. And Kent and I have talked pretty extensively about, you know, how it's somewhat rare for a tight end to be the focal point of an offense. It does not need to be rare for the NC State Wolfpack in 2025. He should lead us in targets, in receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, like literally everything. And that's not an exaggeration. Looking back through some of his stats last year, and I know there's extra context because the run game for NC State was bad. We had a quarterback change and a true freshman kind of thrown into the fire. Had to learn on the fly. Justin Joly only catching 43 balls last year for 661 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't think it's an exaggeration that he should damn near double that. Maybe not the receptions part, but I don't know, maybe. Kenton, would you believe it if I told you Justin Joly only had one singular game where he caught more than 4 passes? And it was the first game against Western Carolina. He had 5. Every single game after that, he had 4 or less catches in the entire game. That's like sickening to think about in retrospect. The fact that he didn't score a touchdown until our 6th game of the season, which was against Wake Forest, that is sickening in retrospect. The fact that this man was averaging 15.4 yards per catch is sickening in retrospect. He is and should be the number 1 focal point of this offense in 2025. Kurt Roper and everyone else on the offensive staff, if you can hear me now. Use this.
The thing that had me gripping my eyes like this in such a disappointed posture is the fact that not only do I remember it, Granny Boone remembers it because she was locked up in the cage until they targeted him for a certain amount of times towards the end of the season. And I'm sure that she would like to keep her freedom. Grayson, don't let her get too far. That's all I'm saying. Don't let her
get nervous. You get real nervous.
I don't know the type of guy Roper is, but what I do know is if we are to be successful, Justin Joly, he may not be the spearhead of the passing game like he was last year, leading us in all those different categories, but he should be used in a bunch of different ways. He should be, because he's that dynamic of a player. He's that dynamic of a player. So if we are not targeting him for a good amount of times per game, what are we doing? Like we talked about last year, it is tantamount to coaching malpractice to have Dave Dorn, who was a tight end, Robert Anai, who was a tight end, and then say, well, we're not going to get this all-world tight end the ball. Brother, what? That is the guy. That is it. If there is nothing else that an offensive coordinator is responsible for doing, I remember hearing the best offensive coordinators find ways to scheme their best players open. A bad offensive coordinator can't find ways to get the ball to their best. And any offensive coordinator that's blind but kind of decent can at minimum find ways to target the guys. Why we weren't targeting him is beyond me. Why we were spamming bubble screens to KC, with all due respect to KC, no player in America is good enough to where you can say, we're going to bubble screen you to death with this guy, and it'll be death by 1,000 cuts. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You have a tight end that's averaging 15 yards per catch. 15. A first down and a half every single time he touches the ball. And you're telling me that we can only get it to him 40 times? Hey, I know somebody who don't want their job when I see it, And
he was handled.
Listen, all I'm gonna say is this: Raleigh's a wonderful city. It's a great city. It's growing. Yeah, there's a lot of construction and whatnot going on now. A little bit of traffic. The exit that I stay off of is always closed after 9 p.m. I get it, but it's a great city. And if you want to give up the job, just relinquish it. You ain't got to take us through losses to get there. You don't have to put us through having to say, man, that one guy sure does end up in the end zone a lot when he gets the ball. It'd be ashamed if we threw it back to him to end up in the end zone some more, Grayson. Wouldn't that just be the darndest thing? Oh, shucky darns. Another game over where he has exactly 4 receptions. We need to get him the ball. Get the ball to your playmakers and get out the way. That's what any offensive coordinator who knows nothing beyond playing Madden and NCAA can do. Find ways to get your playmakers the ball.
I've been playing college football 26 for weeks now, and I've had no problem throwing Justin Joly the football. In fact, he won the Heisman. My first dynasty, I played with NC State. Not saying it's going to happen this year in real life, but the usage, it's not crazy to say that we should be using him in that fashion. And I can't emphasize enough how Justin Joly only gets even more dangerous when you use him as the focal point of the offense, because it really unlocks like everything else around him. If a defense has to look twice and really figure out where 7 is on every play, maybe they lose track of maybe 5, who's Noah Rodgers, or 6, who's Wesley Grimes, or 3, Hollywood Smothers in the background. If you can get Justin Joly into a level of usage in which it's truly like pick your poison. I was pleading for that all year last year, and we never got it. If you can force the defense's hand to almost like guess where the ball is going, and your options then are Noah Rodgers, Wesley Grimes, Hollywood Smothers, and Justin Joly, that's a wonderful place to be, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the time. It has to be now. Justin Joly should be the focal point for this offense. And we knew this already, but he's the best tight end in the ACC conference.
Absolutely. And one last thing before we take it to break here. Defenses have to have a philosophical onus. They have to have a philosophy that they're like, hey, this is what we are going to stop. This is what we're going to take away more than anything else. Some defenses are like, oh, we're going to play big soft zones, keep everything in front of us, bend but don't break. The problem with bend but don't break against this offense, you've got Justin Joly underneath, who is really adept at breaking tackles. You have Hollywood Smothers underneath, who's really good at breaking tackles. So the idea of bend but don't break, we're going to rally and tackle those guys when they get the ball. Well, congratulations. We have 2 demons when they get the ball in their hand, where it's like, oh boy, we've got to take care of that. And then the antithesis or the counter of that is, hey, we need to squeeze the life out of this offense. There are going to be some big busts if our corners can't hold up, but we're going to squeeze everything underneath. Well, one of our wide receivers just clocked in at 4.24. I have a solution to the problem of them saying we need to, shut down everything that's underneath. Have a guy like him take the top off. And then even beyond that, if you say, well, we have one corner who can match him speed for speed, so that's kind of null and void. Well, imagine if you had a guy who could separate vertically, right? Like a Noah Rodgers. Oh boy, how exciting would the offense get? How dangerous would the offense get? And mind you, that's just a high level 1,000-foot up in terms of you can either stop the over the top stuff or you can squeeze the underneath stuff, but you risk leaving man on man or single high coverage in terms of what's going on up top. I'm telling you, this offense ought to cook at multiple levels, because this is not just your average power 4 talent worth of, or average power 4 worth of talent group here. This group exceeds that to a high level. So we need to see that on the field.
Coming up next, we're getting into Mailbag Monday to round out our Monday show. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Monday sponsor is Gametime. We've all been there. logging on early and waiting forever for concert or sporting event tickets to go on sale. All of this waiting only to lose your spot in line for a show or game that you've been dying to see. Live music and live sporting events should be making memories and not dealing with all the stress of ticket shopping. Well, that's where Gametime comes into play. Gametime makes getting concert tickets and live sporting event tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices will actually drop the closer it gets to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of the endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, well, Gametime Zone Deals pick out the best seats in your section for you. If you're ever curious to what the view will be like in the stadium once you arrive, the panoramic seat view in the app will show you exactly what to expect upon arrival. Take all the guesswork out of buying concert and live sporting event tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Last couple minutes of our Monday show. Now time for Mailbag Monday, addressing some of the top questions and comments from last week. Here we go. First one comes from Katie Allman. She says, it seems a lot of portal players come in and are given starting positions. How does that make the guys that are already there and have been fighting to earn a starting position feel? Your thoughts, Kenton?
I mean, this is a performance-based sport. So at the end of the day, it should be all about performance. I don't believe in promising guys things in terms of, opportunity or who's going to be the starter or whatever. I believe in, hey, I'll give you a certain amount or a certain, salary or whatever in terms of NIL deal because, that's something where it's hard and fast. You can't play loosey-goosey with that. You've got to be very steadfast in that regard. But in terms of the ability to get on the field, may the best 11 be on the field, period. I don't care if you've been here for 4 years. I don't care if you've been here for 4 minutes. If you are one of the best 11, go get your tail out there and do what we need you to do. And if you don't fit in that category, if you're in the 2 deep or even deeper than that, stay ready because generally you're never more than 2 to 3 bad plays away from you needing to be the guy. So, I disagree with players being guaranteed positions if that is what's happened, which I can tell you I've heard from very reliable sources that has happened in a couple of instances, which I don't much care for. But that's just kind of that's where I stand on it. I believe best 11. I don't care if you're a senior. I don't care if you're a freshman. I'm not going to, call anybody out or say any names, but we saw last year positions where guys were bought in to be the starter, and we saw objectively you're not performing as well as the incumbent or you're not performing as well as an underclassman. What are we supposed to do with that?
I would imagine a lot of the verbiage between coaches and the people running the NIL and I guess the free agent, if you want to call them that, players in the portal. I wouldn't at all be surprised to hear that there's been some promises thrown around about playing time, this, that, and the third. But piggyback off of Kenton's point, it should be almost solely based on the performance on the practice field. Nobody should be guaranteed a starting spot anywhere. That already will bleed into a toxic locker room culture. I wouldn't all be surprised if a lot of that happened at Florida State last year.
Yeah.
A lot of new transfers coming in. I would guarantee you there was some promises thrown around, a lot of talk about how they're trying to get back to where they were, and they fell flat on their face. And we've heard from multiple different locations that the locker room culture was awful. It was god awful. That's not a coincidence. And so I think what's interesting now about the way the portal is shaping out is like teams like Clemson are seemingly faring better than anyone else because, this is the first year they've even taken people in the portal, but they only took like 4 or 5 players. And you see schools like Georgia or Texas or some of the schools like Ohio State, they're really not taking a ton of players in the portal. They're just kind of farming everything they already have there. So I don't think anybody should be guaranteed a spot to go anywhere to play. You got to earn it. That is what makes a good locker room culture. Next one comes from our guy, Chris. He says, I caught a snippet from Dave Dorn that I hope you guys visit. He's basically in support of doing away with conference championship games in order to rank the top 16 to 20 teams and place the playoff at the end of the season. I couldn't disagree more. The first round of the playoff at that scale is essentially the Sweet 16 of college football. I wouldn't trade a conference championship win for a trip to the Sweet 16 in any sport. The championship games are extremely meaningful to most of the fans, and I truly hope the powers in charge understand that. Does Dave Doran or any coach think that going to college football as an 8 to 16 seed gives you a legitimate shot at surviving 4 rounds and winning a championship? There will be upsets, sure, but upset runs to a title game will be extremely rare. Whereas going into a conference championship game, even as the dog, gives you a legitimate shot at a trophy. Your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Chris here. We should not be getting rid of conference championship games at all. I'm okay with the playoff expanding to 16 or 20. I'm okay with that. I really wouldn't care about that. But what I would not want to see is conference championships go away, because at the end of the day, that is still a signifier that you had a phenomenal season and you still get a one-on-one championship. That is one of those things for me. It means the world to get a one-on-one, to get a, hey, nobody else has this but us this year. That's it. And so, I really and truly look at this and say, I look at the FCS championship, and it's generally always the same couple of teams winning it, right? You're not going to see that much parity in college football, which, by the way, college football has done an amazing job of having at the FBS level. Again, I would not want to see conference championship games go away at all, regardless of how likely or unlikely it is for a 16 seed to get a national championship.
Allow me to triple down on that. I would hate if conference championships get abolished, because it's so valuable to many of these programs. And like Chris was talking about, the fan base. There should be an outright champion of each and every conference in college football. To get rid of that in place of just seeding for the college football playoff, it's virtually pointless. I could not agree more with what Chris is talking about here. And in the same fashion, what I don't want to see happen are teams essentially being punished for making it to the conference championship, like SMU almost was last year. There would have been hell raised, I'm sure, if SMU would have ended up missing out on the CFP for losing their conference championship game against Clemson. You should not be punished for making it to the conference championship of your conference. It matters. And so I don't want to see this go away. They should continue to be played each and every year. Maybe the format can be altered, in the slightest. You have like a 4-team playoff in a conference. I wouldn't exactly hate to see something like that go down, but getting rid of all of it in favor of a 16 seed college football playoff, that to me is entirely pointless. And last one here from Ace Matthews. They say, we need to start a poll. Would NC State fans rather go 11-1 with a loss to the Dirty Foot Club, or 1-11 with a win against the Dirty Foot Club? Kent, your thoughts here? This is actually a lot harder. I don't know. I guess we'll see. What do you think?
This is disgusting. This is
it's the nastiest of work.
Oh my God, this is tough. This is, oh boy. I'm trying to, because obviously an 11-win season guarantees you a spot in the ACC championship and the playoff. Like, that's just the reality. But you got to lose to the Dirty Foot Club. Give me the 11-1. Give me the 11-1. It's a very begrudging 11-1. But we know what it's like to beat those clowns on a regular basis. We don't know what it's like to win 11 games, get to the playoff, get to the ACC championship game. As the old stat that we revealed to you all last week goes, only us and Syracuse haven't even been to one yet. So, I guess give me the 11-1.
Anything that is bad or evil in this world, I can assure you that the two of us hate UNC even more than that. But I'm with Kenton on this. I think the overall benefit of being 11-1 and being in Charlotte for the conference championship, it would also put you in the CFP. That far outweighs the soul-crushing loss that would be losing to the Dirty Foot Club in that scenario. Because on the other side of that, if we're 1-11 and our only win is against UNC, at that point, I got to be honest, I do not care, because I'm more pissed about being 1-11. Like, that would be unequivocally the worst season in school history.
Well, you go into that game 0-11 because it's the last game of the season. So by that point, you're 0-11 going into that game.
Right. And the only thing you get to benefit from is saying, ha, we're the worst team ever and we still beat you. But that's it. That's where the benefit ends. Like, You don't really get bragging rights because you're the worst team in the conference. It would be fun to rub some salt in the wound, but at that point, it's like, what is it really worth? I hate this scenario too, but I think you have to take 11-1 and just maybe look away for 3 hours the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Oh my God. But I do think it's something that should be asked. It is a fascinating question. I'll also run a poll both on Twitter and in the YouTube comments to see everyone else's thoughts on this.
I mean, you see how Ohio State feels. They lost to Michigan in the game, and they won a national championship. And they're like, oh yeah, it's still a great season. Like it's still, it's still. So if NC State ends up going on that type of run, but it's like we had to lose to the Dirty Foot Club. In the words of one Lord Farquaad, that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make.
Why do you have Ward Farquaad on the brain over there? It's great.
Shrek is a classic, Grayson. We all know Shrek, okay?
Now, it is kind of interesting because this experiment has become like the Ohio State experiment. They had a great season. I mean, they lost to Oregon, but they lose to Michigan when they were favored by 1 billion points. You thought they were out, but then they go on to win the national championship. If that were NC State in place of Ohio State, you wouldn't see me complaining too much about a loss to the arch rival, but it is what it is. That will do it for us here on Monday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll be right back here tomorrow on Tuesday for more, and until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.